And hello and welcome to Hollywood Blockbusters. I am your host, Joe Hollywood. And once again, we are joined by Imaginos Pete.
Hey, hey.
Andrew Walker.
Hey, hey.
And I sound like Fat Albert there. No offense.
Hey, hey.
Hey. And our special guest today, joining us for the first time, Luc Poirier.
Hey.
Hello.
Welcome. Who do you represent here today? Give us a quick little promo.
I'm with Michigan Film Network, and we have two feature films currently in pre-production in Michigan. Sci-fi horror called Waitress, and a crime thriller based in Detroit called SSK.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
What does SSK stand for, should I ask?
Spring Steel Killer.
Oh, okay. All right.
The alternate SSK was Steven Spielberg Kosher. There you go.
Just had that
All
locked
right.
and loaded. Just had that locked and loaded.
Now, the reason one of the reasons we invited Luc, other than the fact that he's just a nice guy, we like having him around, is we wanted the name of this episode is called Made in Michigan, and the topic is going to be movies that were either filmed here in Michigan or set here in Michigan, and that is a long list as I did my research over the past couple of days. There are a lot of movies made or set in Michigan. I've read, and I have to agree with this, having grown up here, that Michigan is an attractive place for Hollywood because there's so many diverse locales.
Oh, yeah.
You go to the coast, you have beaches. You can go to the wilderness. You can go urban. You can go small town. We
Sand
have a
dunes
little
for the
of
desert.
everything. Yeah,
Snow, you get winter, you get fall.
exactly. You have all the seasons and everything.
You can film in hell?
There you go.
Yeah.
Michigan, if you need that, yeah.
Were you waiting to use that?
Absolutely. Locked and loaded.
That's in his notes.
Yeah.
You don't have potato
That's
flake
two.
snow.
Yeah, no, we don't need that stuff. So Michigan is very appealing. Now, in 2008, the administration at the time allowed film incentives because other states were doing that in the U.S., and it was drawing the film industry to those states. So Michigan wanted a piece of that, so they offered film incentives to filmmakers beginning in 2008. And basically what would happen is if they came to Michigan and they spent X amount of dollars, they would get a certain percentage refunded to them. Now, there were pros and cons, or I should say there were people for them and against them. Those who were pro-film incentives, which includes me, argued that for every dollar that was spent here in Michigan by the film industry, the state would get back multifold in just props and casting and transportation and hotels and food, and all the money that the industry would be spending here in Michigan would far exceed that refund that the film industry got. Those who opposed the incentives said, we can't afford to just give a flat out refund. And it's like, I would argue you're not seeing the big picture. Michigan was getting back far more than that it was giving. Yep. And I remember the governor at the time, Snyder, he looked me dead in the eye and said, I am not going to touch these film incentives. And then he napalmed them. Yeah. And that was in 2015, and they went away. And the industry went away for the most part. And I think the hardest hit, I think, was Pontiac because they had that film studio there. What was that film studio called?
It was right on South Boulevard.
And up there, it was called Raleigh Studios at first, then became Michigan Motion Pictures.
Right.
That's it, yeah. Yep. And they had invested in this studio, and there were movies that we're going to be talking about a little bit later.
You had
that
Republican owners, John Rocalta Jr. and Alfred Taubman. They're both. I mean,
Taubman was in with that.
Yeah, they owned Raleigh Studios. They were big investors in it, and they had 9 $100 million movies at the time. Wizard of Oz being one of them. Superman,
sure, Batman versus Superman,
Avengers,
yeah.
Dark Knight Rises. They were all coming here.
Dark Knight Rises,
because they went to Pittsburgh.
I remember they went to Pittsburgh
because that looked like Gotham.
So basically, after saying that Snyder wasn't going to touch these incentives. They pulled the rug out under. Imagine the investment that went into the studio and thinking, oh, this is going to be a long-term.
They were Republicans.
Industry. Yeah.
They were his own people. They gave it to his campaign. I mean, whatever happened to classic political, like I, you know.
Yeah, and think of the jobs that were lost, and you know, the romantic side of things, the glamour side of things, was that it was just such a fun time that films were coming to Michigan, and you could be an extra, or you can witness filming, you could meet a movie star. It was a glorious, glorious time. It was so much fun.
It was so easy.
Yes.
I mean, if you had a dream about being an actor, that was the time. Because it was so easy to get in as an extra, and then you start working your way up from there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes you would start off as an extra, and then they would say, we need someone to deliver a line, and then you got your SAG-eligible credits or whatever to work towards SAG.
5 words. Just had to say
5 words, and
That's
that gets
the
you the
rule?
eligibility.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
awesome.
Wouldn't that be funny if they gave everybody in the movie 4 words just to fuck with them?
Well,
You say 4, and then you add the 5th.
it's funny because when you're watching movies like me now, and I see somebody that I know that has a role, I'll count their words.
Sure.
And 9 times out of 10, they're at 5 words because they were just given that line that day,
Yeah,
and it's like, well, it's 5 words.
yeah.
I have no hair today. You just made a considerable amount of money.
Yeah.
Please
Yeah, and-
don't kill me, monster.
Now let's talk about during that time period from 2008 to 2015, films were coming to Michigan, and you mentioned Batman versus Superman, and I got to be an extra for one day on Batman versus Superman, and it was so much fun. And the story that I like to share, and I should warn everybody, you're going to be getting all kinds of Forrest Gump anecdotes from me today because I've run into all kinds of people while we were filming movies here. So I'll be name dropping like a mofo today. So I get called over to the Pontiac studio. They had this green screen outdoor set up, and it was a fallen statue of Superman. Spoiler alert, in the movie, he was thought to have been killed toward the end of the movie. So we were having a candlelight vigil, and we were waiting for the sun to reach a certain point, and they had the big, giant IMAX camera that came in over my shoulder. And so we were waiting, and then once we hit the certain light that we needed, they lit everyone's candles and stuff. And I remember as we were waiting, someone walked past me in a long kind of a overcoat, glasses, and they went and stood over to my left. And as we're waiting for the cameras to roll, I turned to a fellow extra and I said, this is kind of fun, but I was kind of hoping to see Batman or Superman. And the guy looks at me like I'm an idiot, and he points to the guy in the overcoat and says, that's Superman right over there. And the moral of the story is the Clark Kent disguise worked. I did not recognize Superman. I felt like a moron.
Joe, it's the most obvious thing, and you fell for it.
But I was misled because I was under the impression that Superman was dead. So why is Clark Kent standing on the set? And I think they re-edited the movie because he was nowhere to be seen in the finished cut in that particular scene. But yeah, I had Superman walk right past me, and I'm like, and you are... can you go get me something from craft services, man?
Yeah.
So that was a cool story. But it was those kind of moments that were so much fun for a movie buff like me to be part of the process, and love him or hate him, Zack Snyder standing right next to me, calling the shots and stuff. It was really, really cool. What about you guys? When those films were coming during the incentives, did you take part in anything? Did you witness anything during that period?
I had a side moment. I was at a 24-hour coffee store in Birmingham because that's when it used to be called Java Hut, and I was studying, and I looked up and I saw Daniel Craig staring at me. Wow. He wasn't looking at me; he was looking at his wonderful wife Rachel Weisz, who was acting in Oz, the Oz movie, James Franco.
Okay.
So they were staring in Birmingham, and I looked up and I see, like, oh my God, James Bond's staring at me.
That is so cool.
Are we undressing each other? Oh no, he's talking to his
slowly
to his wife, and I was like, this is something. Okay, I'm gonna. So it's just, you don't bother me. It's just, that could have been part of the normal. I think there was an interview that a gentleman who was in the Batman vs Superman movie, he was an actor. I think something Newman, Chris Newman or something. He was saying he was walking down Birmingham and Amy Adams was there with her kids, watching them in the in the park, and it's just one of those things that would just happen, and you miss those things. I mean, that could have actually happened. You just let it grow, but nobody has some vision.
Yeah,
there.
that's so cool. And I know several other people who were in different scenes. My friend Rich was in the courtroom scene, and him and I saw the movie together, and we're looking for him. There he is. There he is.
What was it? The one at the Wayne County?
I believe so.
Go ahead. I'll tell you
So
my connection.
So we spot him. He's a security guard in the courtroom. So we see him in the back there, and somebody comes in with like a bomb in their wheelchair or whatever, and like blows up the courtroom.
Yeah.
And I turn to my buddy, and I'm like, "You just got killed in the Superman movie. That's awesome! Like that was so cool to have been part of that." And he got to see Henry Cavill in full Superman outfit and everything.
So
And
he made the final cut?
he did, yeah. He made it in the film, but R.I.P. He was taken out.
I have an actor friend who spent 3 to 5 days on set with both Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck.
Nice.
And he was, I believe, one of the bodyguards for the sexy bald guy.
Lex
Lex
Luthor?
Luthor.
Yeah.
All right?
Jesse Eisenberg, sexy.
No.
Well, then
He thinks all bald guys are sexy.
Well, yeah. So he has lines with Henry Cavill, but they were edited out.
Yeah, and that happened.
Now he did get his name. His name did make the credits.
Okay, good.
In the credit roll,
Oh, sure.
but what was 3 to 5 days worth of filming, I didn't even see. I watched it twice,
Yeah.
and I couldn't spot him.
He might be on the extended edition that they
Oh,
released.
you know what?
on
That's
HBO.
right. Next time I have
That would
7.5 hours to kill, I'll watch that Jack Snyder edition.
Yes. Well, now, what was your story?
So my former neighbor, she lived right down the street from me. Her name's Megan. So in real life, she's a court stenographer, and they wanted her to be in that courtroom scene as the stenographer.
Mm-hmm.
But when she got there, they were like, "Okay, so we already have another stenographer. She's gonna have the role," but she still got to be in the crowd,
Oh, okay.
sitting in the pews or whatever behind
Yeah.
the main court part. And I asked her about the explosion part, and they said they told everybody when to act shocked and screamed and go like this.
Yeah.
And then they shone a really bright white light on
Yeah.
everybody, and then flew a bunch of like paper and
Sure.
debris,
Yeah.
for the explosion.
How cool.
But
to
yeah,
witness that.
she told me that. But I personally never got the chance to partake in any of the filming here during that time period, and I missed it by a year because sometime in 2016 is when
That's when you were born.
still the youngest on the show.
He played Baby Superman.
That 2016 is when I started getting involved with like performance stuff, and that's when I first started taking improv classes at Go Comedy in Ferndale. And then the year before was when the incentives pretty much stopped.
Yeah.
But a lot of people that I had classes with, and one of my teachers there was in a movie. So they were all talking about it. I'm like, wow, I just missed out on some of this stuff.
Yeah. Now, here's a really cool footnote on Batman versus Superman. So some of the filming locations, we mentioned the studio in Pontiac, but they also filmed at the Wayne County building, the Detroit Public Library, the Michigan Central Depot, which has since been renovated. But that, from what I was told, that's where Batman and Superman had their big fight.
Yes.
They filmed out this way in Metamora, and right across the street from where we are sitting right now is
right.
Orion Oaks County Park, where, and I was so furious that I found out about this after the fact, but right across the street from where my office is was the Wayne Mausoleum, the family mausoleum where his parents were interred. And I only found out about that afterward. But here's the cool footnote. For about a year or two after the movie had been filmed and had been released, if you went to Google Maps and you typed in Wayne Manor, Google Maps took you to Orion Oaks County Park right across the street. Now, me being such a huge Batman fan, knowing that every day I came to work across the street from the Wayne Manor location was pretty darn cool. That was really, really neat. So they filmed here in Michigan from May to December in 2014. When the movie came out, I thought it was okay. There were a lot of flaws with it, and then they did the Snyder cut, which I didn't think improved things, even though people begged to differ. But it was really cool knowing all that was going on. And I remember one time driving with my sister on Michigan Avenue, we saw like the crew outside of this diner with lights and all this stuff, and we're like, oh, they must be doing Batman over here. And it turned out it's where Superman's mom, Martha Kent, she was working at the diner or something. Yeah. Yeah. So that was the cool thing about having these films here in Michigan, is you'd be driving down the street and stumble onto something and go, oh, what's going on over there?
I know when, for a while too, I don't know how many days it was, but one of the local park accesses on Clarkston Road was taken over by the film crews. And I think it was probably the crew parking only. It was closed off to the public. And it would have, the signage. It was like BVS with an arrow.
Oh, how cool.
And they were all over Clarkston Road and all that. And
Cool.
And I know too. Did you mention Michigan State? They were filming there.
Oh, for this movie?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
They did because Michigan State has. I think its library is like.
I think it was an art gallery. They
Oh,
filmed
it's
in.
an art. Okay.
Yeah.
It's this crazy looking structure that made it in the movie.
Yeah.
But
Was it that scene where Bruce Wayne and Batman, Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent meet?
For the first time.
Yeah,
Yep.
and they had
That
that
one
little
right there.
exchange.
That
Okay.
one right there. Yep.
Yeah.
He's like, I have a little freaks dressed like clowns, and you're like,
Yeah.
this is awkward.
Another film that was filmed here locally, even though it was set in Oklahoma, I believe. I always run into people who were part of this in some way as an extra or whatever. Into the Storm came out August 8th, 2014, directed by Stephen Quayle. I think that's how you pronounce his last name, Quale. And it starred Richard Armitage, Sarah Wayne Callies, who I'm like, why does that name sound familiar? She played Lori Grimes on The Walking Dead. Matt Walsh was in the film. It's basically one of those when Hollywood was going through their found footage phase, where this is all supposedly shot on video. This was a Tornado Chasers found footage film. And they started filming in the Detroit area on August 23rd, 2012. And it was, I've never seen it, I'm embarrassed to admit, but apparently it was a modest hit. It earned $161 million on a $50 million budget, which I wasn't aware of.
That's awesome.
Now, its scores on Rotten Tomatoes, 21% and 41% on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's Lori's fault.
But locations included Detroit, Meadowbrook Hall. There were scenes in Oakland Township and Pontiac. But the cool thing for someone who lives here in Lake Orion, Michigan, is Oakview Middle School, which is the Lake Orion School District's newest school for the most part, stood in as Silverton High School, a fictional school, and there's some pretty cool scenes that were filmed at Oakview Middle School where it gets hit by a tornado and everyone's bracing themselves up against the lockers, and I think a couple of people got sucked out. But it was featured very, very prominently in this film, and then I guess the main family's home was in Auburn Hills. So it's really cool to see a lot of those locations in a movie like this.
I was just looking it up, but I thought that I couldn't find it online, but I thought they filmed part of one of the storm sequences on the side of the landfill that's right across the street from the palace, or where the palace was,
Okay.
facing Lapeer Road. Because I remember driving by there one day, and they had a bunch of almost like silver tarps that I think might have translated to something digital. I don't know how they did it, But I remember reading, I think it was in the Oakland Press, like, "Yay, local film crew just got done filming." Of course, they announced it after
Yeah.
it happened. But that's the one thing I remember about the
During that
filming.
time.
I don't remember hearing anything about that school.
I mean,
That's
Yeah.
actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, what better location for devastation
yeah.
than an actual functioning landfill?
Yeah.
And
you
plus,
know?
it gives it some elevation. They can
Yeah,
do whatever
yeah.
they want.
Sure.
I'm just
You know,
concerned-
another high school, Joe,
Yeah.
that was featured prominently at this time period.
Mhm.
Of this was Clarkston High School in the series Hung,
Really?
the HBO series.
Yeah.
Oh, there were a lot of local locations
Yeah.
in that series. Yeah.
But
The Redford Theater, I remember, was featured
Yeah.
real prominently. And I grew up in Hamtramck. And on one episode, I think it was the main character wore a Hamtramck sweatshirt or something, which was really
Yeah.
cool to see.
I was an extra
Yeah.
in 5 episodes.
Oh,
in,
wow.
in the
Nice.
first season.
That's awesome.
In the first
Cool.
season.
You know,
So-
you want to be proud that local, locations were in the film, but then you think about the subject matter. And go,
Oh, yeah.
yikes.
That generated so much conversation, because they didn't disclose the name of the series
Yeah.
to the families that were allowing their children to be background
Yeah.
actors
Yeah, exactly.
until
So-
afterwards.
So were you comfortable doing your nude scenes or no?
Actually, I was.
Don't be such a prude, Andrew.
Hey,
I had no idea that-
anything for a buck.
I had no idea that took place here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Thomas Jane, who we're going to talk about again in a moment, he was the star of that series.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
they filmed
Got
all
a
over the
funny-
Metro Detroit.
I got a funny story about Thomas Jane.
Yeah.
And at the time I thought he was just being friendly. So there's like 150 of us extras hanging around getting ready to do this scene. And he's riding around on a bicycle in the parking lot of this restaurant this scene takes place in. And he's telling everybody in line not to try to show him up.
Huh.
And I thought,
Interesting.
oh, okay, we're extras. Why? Well, but that's a thing.
Yeah.
And he was very adamant.
Wow.
In hindsight, when I'm looking back, because at the time I thought, well, that's kind of strange. Why would you feel the need to say that? You're the lead,
Yeah.
and you're telling extras who have no words
Yeah.
to not try and show you up. I mean,
Interesting.
has that happened enough times before?
He's had to have, there had to have been some incident that prompted that. I
Yeah,
guess,
but he was on a bicycle and he was just riding around the whole line. He's like, hey, know your place. Stay, don't try to show me up. I mean,
See,
okay.
See, you get to be like a Hollywood insider when you take part in these productions.
I figure there's one of those scenes that there's a murder in it, and then that one lady's like, "I'm going to give the scream of all screams." Like, that lady, find me her.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything.
Another movie that I'm embarrassed to admit I just watched like a few days ago. But this was during the peak of the film incentives. A movie called Real Steel
Oh, yeah.
was released on October 7th, 2011.
My buddy who worked at GM was in the Renaissance Center. He said they were filming down at the base. He's like, "What's going on
Yeah.
down there?" He
Yeah.
saw Hugh Jackman. He's like, "Nick, Hugh Jackman's here."
Yeah.
Like in your cubicle? Like, what are you talking about?
So directed by Sean Levy, starring Hugh Jackman, Evangeline Lilly, Anthony Mackie. Pretty big hit. Earned $300 million on a $110 million budget. Pretty good reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, 60% and 73%.
All future Marvel actors.
Yeah, definitely. And I got to say, having watched it recently, I was just beaming with pride. There were the Detroit locations were featured so prominently and beautifully that, and watching the movie, one of the things that made me feel bad about the incentives going away is that anyone who's a fan of Real Steel would see those locations and go, I want to visit those locations. It's called tourism.
Yes.
And that's another
Yes.
thing that by getting rid of these incentives, you don't have these locations that people want to visit.
Yeah,
So-
particularly with Real Steel, any location that an actor by the name of Rich Goteri visits,
Yeah.
people are going to want to go to, because the 5 words that he said in Real Steel really made that movie complete.
Do you remember his line? Do you know what it is?
It's, "Sir, walk this way, please."
You know him personally? Or
Our paths have crossed a couple
Because-
of times.
Did he do an accent? Did he have a? Was he like a?
No,
Okay.
no, he was legit. He was
all right.
just, you
'Cause
know, he walked in, he introduced some people to another
Yeah.
group of people, and then he was like,
How cool.
I saw that name.
5 words, though. That's what he
Yeah,
had.
yeah.
I saw that name on the cast list today because for all these movies, I was going through the cast list to see if there's anybody locally that I knew,
Yeah.
and one of them was one of my previous improv teachers.
Yeah.
That was the one person I saw.
Yeah.
But I saw that last name Gautier, and I thought I'd seen it or heard it around here somewhere.
Well,
It's
he's
probably that dude.
Is he a teacher? Is he an
he's a-
acting teacher?
He's an acting teacher.
Yeah, I know several people who went through
he's,
him. Yeah.
Okay.
And one of his things about his school is that it's being taught by actors that are currently working
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
and not has-beens.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, who are like, damn it, what am I going to do now that nobody wants to cast me?
Yeah. Well,
I
teach.
guess I'll teach.
Yeah.
You know, the interesting thing with Real Steel, Hugh Jackman was interviewed, and he said he loved filming in Michigan.
Oh,
His
sure.
family came to stay with him during that time,
Wow.
and they had they're Australian, so they had a misconception. It's Detroit. Be
Yeah,
careful.
right.
Right.
And they got
Yeah.
here, like the people are wonderful. It was a great place. We had, and everyone says that. Clint Eastwood said the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Sam Raimi, George Clooney, Ryan Gosling. Everyone who filmed it was like, we love it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just what you two guys just said. That's not something you can put a dollar value on.
Exactly.
But once the word spreads
Mm-hmm.
People are going to
Ba-
want to come
back
here,
to LA, maybe to some higher ups in New York, they're going to be like, guess what? Once you're actually in Michigan, it's more beautiful than you think.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And if you want to film something in an abandoned warehouse, hey, you got that. If you want lakes, like we talked about earlier, sand dunes, whatever, you can film everything within a 3-hour drive of Detroit.
Yeah, exactly. So some of the locations featured in Real Steel, there's a town called Mason. They filmed at the Ingham County Courthouse where he had to make an appearance to turn his son over
Yep.
to his in-laws or whatever. I was surprised to find out that there was a scene filmed in Oxford at the famed gravel pits.
I was going to ask you if you knew where that was because
Yeah, it's right off of Lapeer Road. At one time, Oxford was the gravel capital of the world.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yep.
No.
Yeah. There are gravel pits that helped pave America's roads. Yeah.
If you look
Oh.
at like a Google image aerial view of a lot of the area north of downtown Oxford, it's all gravel pits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe the scene that was filmed there, having watched it, was when the kid discovers that robot that's kind of partially buried and digs him
Yeah.
out. I think that whole sequence was filmed at the gravel pits there. They filmed in Heartland, Holly, which is not too far from here, Cobo Arena, Renaissance Center. One of the coolest locations I thought was the at the time was the Belle Isle Zoo, which had been not in operation for all, but they've since reopened it, haven't they? Or am I thinking of the aquarium? But
I think the aquarium.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of neat. When I was a kid, I went to the Belle Isle Zoo, so it was kind of neat to see that prominently featured. The Model T plant in Highland Park, which I read online, they hardly had to do any digital effects because the place was so vast. And it went on for miles that they're like, yeah, we don't have to extend it digitally. So that was featured, and then the Yankee Air Museum in Belleville. So yeah, and so it was really cool watching that movie, seeing all these locations prominently featured. It was really, really neat to see that. So Detroit's always had this bad reputation nationally. There's a line in Airplane where they're like, oh, this club was full of vile criminals, and it was worse than Detroit. Like, Detroit always had this thing. And watching Real Steel, the Renaissance Center, Cobo just looks stunning. Even the Silver Dome, there's exteriors of the Silver Dome that look spectacular. Again, that's what we've lost by these movies going away, is it paints Detroit in this positive light that makes people maybe want to come here.
I mean, there's also Beverly Hills Cop. Axel, do you want to say, no, I'm going to go back to Detroit for some good old-fashioned American street violence? It's like, all right, thank you, Axel.
We're going to get to Beverly Hills Cop in a second. But I'm looking to see what other movies filmed here during the incentive period. Need for Speed, released in 2014, starring Aaron Paul, Michael Keaton, Rami Malek, earned $203 million on a $66 million budget. It's basically like a cross country
Yeah.
race sort of a thing, but they make a stop in Detroit. And I remember there's a chase scene that takes place in Detroit. And there's this really cool scene where this custom Mustang is airborne and the car's coming at the camera and you see the Renaissance Center behind it. And I'm like, what a cool shot. I saw it in the theater. So Detroit was only featured for a little bit, but I remember people making a big deal when it was in town and people, they're filming this movie
On
in
your
Detroit.
list, are any of the Fast and Furious movies on there?
No.
I'm surprised that hasn't happened. With
I know. Why did they never bring at least one of those movies to Detroit? It makes no
Well, they
sense.
have 7 more to go, so it's going to happen.
They're on number 12, for God's sakes.
Yeah, right. So I think that covers all of the movies that I had on my list that
I think
took
even
part.
lesser ones, Ides of March, the political thriller with Ryan Gosling and George Clooney was filmed here.
Yeah.
That
It
was.
was.
And Sam Raimi was one of the first ones when they did that Oz movie.
yeah.
Everybody cited it. And that's the thing. If they had tweaked, like you were saying, look, that they tweaked the incentives to say, incentivize jobs. You come here, we'll cut you a check, but you have to hire the crews from here, the electricians, the
Yeah.
plumbers, the
Right.
carpenters.
That's
the staff.
exactly
Yeah.
the loophole.
Yeah.
'Cause I remember being on sets where even the catering was brought in. The caterers were brought in from L.A.
Yeah. and
And it's like, well, there's
That
right
defeats
across
the
street.
purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I think a lot of extras got their start, was because they had a quota.
Right.
They had to get so many Michigan people and so many Michigan dollars in payroll. And, well, let's just pay a bunch of extras. And we would be sitting in tents, and there'd be hundreds. And I'm thinking, a lot of these people aren't even going to get up. They're going to spend 8-9 hours sitting here
Right.
getting paid.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, well, that's, and at the time I'm thinking, that's like a waste of payroll.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
But that's the nature of
But-
filmmaking, is a lot of sitting around and
yeah,
wait.
hurry up and wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hurry up and wait.
But I think those tweaks, had they been given a chance to be implemented within that 5-year window, I think
Yeah.
when Granholm instituted it, was supposed to be a 5-year window. Give it 5 years, make adjustments along the way, and you
Yeah.
will see the benefits. Like
Yeah.
you're talking
Yeah.
about the long-term view of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
The director of the Michigan Film Office at the time,
Mm-hmm.
I had spoken to him, and I forget his name. He passed away recently, but he was telling me that the paperwork was so crucial that any mistakes, and it would get flagged, and it would get just chucked aside. And it's not like, I think you were saying, or maybe you were saying earlier, about coming back and fixing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and dot
Right.
that I and cross that T.
Yeah.
But it was like, nope, back
Yeah.
to square one. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. I do have a movie here on my list. I don't know if it was impacted by the incentives or not, because it came out at the end of the year that the incentives took effect, but I'll bring it up anyways. You remember the movie Gran Torino?
Yeah.
Filmed in 2008, released in December of 2008, so it probably did benefit from the incentives.
That was a great movie.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And Eastwood loved filming here.
Yeah, yeah. Now, a friend of mine who also works in video production, we were chatting one day, and I said, hey, I heard Clint Eastwood's doing a movie here. Do you know where they're filming? And he goes, as a matter of fact, I think tomorrow they're in Royal Oak. So I drove out to Royal Oak, parked over by the post office where I saw a film crew, and got out of the car, saw a small crowd had gathered watching the production. And I turned to the woman next to me, and I go, you seen anything cool yet? And she goes, there's Clint Eastwood right over there. He's standing right across the street. And they were filming exteriors at the barber shop, which are some of my favorite scenes in the movie. And so Clint would come out of the barber shop, get into the pickup truck, drive off, come around the block, park, they'd shoot it again. And I brought a still camera with me, so I actually got pictures of Clint Eastwood in front of the barber shop. And it was a
Nice.
huge thrill to see a legend. I mean, this guy's a legend. One of the last few great movie stars from the,
And
classic.
you got to
period.
love his directing style. I've seen Tom Hanks talk about it on some other talk shows, and he's like, you'll have Clint Eastwood walk up, okay, go ahead. So let's start. And then he'd say, okay, that's enough of that. It's like, all right. I mean, I guess when you're being directed by Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
You know-
he directed and starred in the film. Surprising hit, earned $270 million on a $25 to $30 million budget.
Now that's an ROI I can get behind.
Yeah. And the score, the Rotten Tomatoes score, 81 from critics, 90 from the audience.
Yeah.
Filming locations included Walt Kowalski's house, located at 238 Rhode Island Street in Highland Park. Not sure I'd want to go looking for that location in Highland Park. I don't know if Highland Park's any better, but when I was young, that was a scary place to be. The barbershop that I mentioned was on 11 Mile Road in Royal Oak, right across the street from the post office. The vehicles, I have kind of a cool story about the vehicles. So Clint Eastwood in the film, his character Walt drove a 1972 Ford F-100 pickup truck. That was featured more prominently in the film than the titular Gran Torino, the 1972 Ford Gran Torino Sport. That, for the most part, that car sat in the parking lot, or not the parking lot, the driveway of Walt's home. Not too long, I can't remember if the film had come out yet, but someone sent me an email saying, Joe, you might be interested in this. Some of those cars are up for sale on eBay right now. And I'm like, get out of here. So I reach out to the seller, and I said, he was in Maybe, Michigan, and I said, can I come out and see the cars? And he goes, yeah, sure. So I drove out to Maybe, Michigan, which was like a good hour-plus ride, and I met Don Ripple, who told me that he was what they called the picture car mechanic on Gran Torino. And it was his job to locate vehicles for the film, and he'd run them past Clint Eastwood for his approval. So he located the Gran Torino, the pickup truck, the Honda Civic driven by the gang members and all that stuff. And then it was his job to maintain those vehicles during filming. And he says, as a matter of fact, at one point when they were filming scenes with the pickup truck, the battery died. And they all turn and look at him like time is money. And he had an extra battery that he had to swap out really, really quickly to get things going. So after filming wrapped, Clint Eastwood took the Gran Torino with him to L.A., and Don was allowed to keep the other cars, and he decided to sell them. And if I would have had the money at the time, I could have had that pickup truck for about $5,000.
Are you
It
serious?
sold for like $5,000.
Whoa.
And it's a rusty old Ford
sure.
or whatever, but it's a movie car.
Yeah.
And I think it ended up being bought by someone in Texas. I don't even know if they knew its pedigree. They probably used it to haul feed or
I need it
something.
for
Now
parts.
they charge
Yeah.
$5 a picture. And made it, now come here, charge $5 a picture.
Yeah. So I got to sit in the truck, and I got pictures of me sitting in it, the very same truck used in the film. And so I was trying to track down the Gran Torino, and I call Warner Brothers. What's Warner Brothers' phone number? And I call it. And some guy's like, Warner Brothers. And I said, hey, I'm trying to track down the Gran Torino from Gran Torino. Any idea where it is? And he goes, I'm looking at it outside my window. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It was on the Warner Brothers lot.
Wow.
And so in 2011, a couple years later, I went to L.A. and toured the Warner Brothers lot, and they had this room full of TV and movie cars. And there, sitting in the room, was the Gran Torino
Nice.
from Gran Torino. It was
Wow.
really cool to see it in person and got some pictures with it.
You
and
have
stuff,
to feel
so.
bad for the guy that answers the phone because you at least were a normal. It's like, why did that movie stink? Why does it cost so much, sir? I'm not that. Let me transfer you.
The language was so bad in that movie.
But what are the odds? And do you know where the Gran
Right.
Torino is? I'm looking at it. That's insane to me. That's another one of my Forrest Gump moments. So I have a special connection to Gran Torino, and I have the poster at home. And like I said, to see a living legend doing his thing and being a car guy and being able to sit in the pickup, I just feel this bond with the movie, and it was so cool that
And see,
they
I feel
filmed
that
here.
they robbed Michigan of those experiences.
Exactly.
When the
Yeah.
and I truly I don't want to get political, but you have to blame the Republican Party for this because they led the charge, and you didn't get enough maybe fight from the Democratic Party. Because I could have just said,
I agree.
"Oh, so you hate America and you hate Michigan. You think Arizona's better than Michigan? You think Ohio's better than Michigan? That'll go
Georgia.
well.
Georgia.
Georgia,
Yeah.
and
They're-
because
They become Hollywood East.
It
well,
is.
here's the thing:
Yep.
Arizona, and they create anywhere, even their conservative estimates are between 34 to 60,000 permanent jobs because it's year round,
Yeah.
and then, transition jobs that come in and go depending. So you add whatever number that is, but
Yeah.
34 to 60,000 permanent jobs in that location, and different counties benefit from it. The same thing would happen here. You said we're going to use farm counties, so even the rural, conservative counties, you will benefit because they have to come and film there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you don't like jobs,
Yeah.
and you don't like Michigan, because Arizona
Don't
can
like
do it.
money.
In 2022, states that were like, oh, we don't like film incentives. Arizona did it. Indiana did it. West Virginia did it.
Louisiana.
I mean, no, but they have it. But
Oh,
these were
okay.
states
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we don't like film incentives, just like Michigan. They were like, oh, no, wait, no, we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
In 2022, they brought this up. This is,
Yeah.
I can feel my blood pressure going up.
You know what's
I
interesting?
could see your blood.
I can feel my blood pressure.
Andrew, when you mentioned Hollywood East, you know what's interesting is I've been reading a lot lately about Hollywood is suffering right now. Sound
Yes.
stages are sitting empty.
Yep.
And I think a big reason for that is Atlanta.
It
Atlanta is getting all the Avengers movies and the Marvel movies and Stranger Things and all that stuff's going to Atlanta, and Hollywood is
they've
kind
built
of
some-
taking a hit.
Some huge sound stages on
Yeah.
the south of the metro area, and I have pretty much my whole mom's side of the family lives in northeast Georgia. But I tell my cousins all the time, you guys should move down to Atlanta.
Mhm.
You can make a living just doing catering for
Sure.
all these things. Think about that.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah.
There's big money in catering and all the ancillary industries associated with that.
I mean, the electricians, plumbers,
Yes,
caterers,
construction,
you
all
know,
that stuff.
And, The Walking Dead filmed for
Yep.
years. They may still be filming there.
Yeah.
And that brings me back to the point I brought up before. Tourism. People go to Atlanta. Here's, where they film this, and this is where they film that. And people go back long after these movies wrap to see where they
I
filmed.
was going to say, if they don't have it now, they will in a couple years. Actual tours,
Sure.
like they do out in
They
L.A.
probably do
Well, like they
now,
used to have
Yeah.
out in L.A.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I give personal tours when I'm out there, but I don't make any money doing that.
I mean, I guess, if you don't want to incentivize the film industry, then don't incentivize any industry because they all require some time to get set up.
Exactly.
You're not going to make profit right away.
And there's a return on investment.
The only thing I can think of that's a quick return on investment is cocaine and hookers.
Yeah.
Like that's other than that, there's no other industry that even the casinos took a while to generate money, and they're like,
Yeah.
ooh, gambling.
And casinos can fail. Ask Donald Trump.
That's right.
Now, another film. Now this filmed in Michigan about 7 years before the incentives went into effect, and that's a point I wanted to bring up too. Long before the incentives, long after the incentives, Hollywood still comes to Michigan to do movies, and one of the reasons that this movie filmed here in Detroit was because Tiger Stadium looked more like Yankee Stadium than Yankee Stadium did.
Oh,
New Yorkers
So-
hate that, but I enjoy bringing that up to them.
here comes another Forrest Gump moment.
Yeah, this could go on a while. How much time you got? So in 2000, I was severed from one job and hadn't started my next job yet, and found out that Billy Crystal was coming to Detroit to film a movie, HBO film called 61. At Tiger Stadium. And my friends had gotten on as extras, and they said, Joe, pick up the phone, call, you're not doing anything. So I call, I get this casting agent on the phone. I said, I heard you're casting extras. And she said, you know what? We need reporters. Like, we need to cast reporters. And I said, that's what I do. So she said, come down to Tiger Stadium. We'll put you through wardrobe. So I show up, and they had already converted Tiger Stadium to Yankee Stadium, and I almost vomited because the interior was this, bluish green look, and I'm like, what did you do at Tiger Stadium? And so I went through wardrobe, and they because it was a period piece, 1961, I had 1961 clothing and an old tape recorder and stuff. And on day one of filming, I'm getting directions from Billy Crystal on the field. It's opening day. And I look for my friends who told me about this and encouraged me to call. And I see him in the bleachers, and I'm standing on the field, and I spot him and wave at him, and they both flip me off. They're like, we're up here in the bleachers, and you're getting directions from Billy Crystal. And so I ended up working 2 weeks on the film. Rich Goteri was on the film.
Wow.
He had a speaking part in 61 where
5 words.
the baseball.
Okay.
Yeah, right. No, he had Roger Maris sign a baseball, and as a joke, Roger Maris put an X on it, and Rich Goteri gets really upset about it. But I'm on the field at Tiger Stadium, hobnobbing with the likes of Anthony Michael Hall, Thomas Jane, Barry Pepper, who I had loved in Saving Private Ryan and The Green Mile.
Jackson.
I'm just like hanging out with these guys. And I got a scene with Bruce McGill, who played D-Day in Animal House. So my biggest claim to fame in the movie is I'm on screen for a full minute. And in the background, I'm interviewing Bruce McGill, who plays the Yankee manager. And I remember that scene was split up over 2 days. We ran out of daylight, basically. But I have to pretend to interview him in the background. And I didn't want to be a fan and, like, ask him about John Belushi or anything like that. But the second day, he's like, and then John Belushi. Like, he was just volunteering these stories about Animal House. And I'm like, tell me more. And it was the most amazing 2 weeks of my life, getting full access to Tiger Stadium. I was considered what they call a featured extra.
Yeah.
So it's funny, there's kind of a hierarchy on film sets. So you got your principals, your main actors and stuff. And then you have like that next tier underneath that. And then there's featured extras. Then there's like the extras who fill, the seats or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the low lives, which we call the hot doggers, who would sit way in the back, and they could wear their street clothes. They didn't have to go through wardrobe. And they were given a hot dog to come in and fill seats at the end of the day. And I thought it was funny that there was that hierarchy on the set. It's like, those are the hot doggers over there. But man, it was so much fun, and I ended up in 9 different scenes in the film. Like I said, the one scene lasted a full minute. Well, I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
See, now I want to go watch this movie.
Oh yeah, look for me. I'm a
and that's
little
why I
thinner
wanna go
back
see
then.
it.
Now there's a crazy footnote to this. So when the DVD came out, so if you watch 61 with the director's commentary, when he gets to the scene where I'm in the background interviewing Bruce McGill, Billy Crystal, who's doing the commentary, says, if you look in the background, Bruce McGill is getting interviewed. And I'm like, like Billy Crystal just directed the viewers to me in the background. It was, I had goosebumps. It was really amazing.
Do you know
That's very
approximately like what minute mark that is?
It's during opening day, so it's within the first 5 minutes or so of the film. So
it's probably on HBO, right?
Yeah, on Max.
I'll
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
check it out.
So it starts out like in the present day when Mark McGwire is trying to break the home run record, and then it kind of goes back to the 1961, and it's opening day where Madeline and Maris are coming out for batting practice, and you'll see a guy with like an Indiana Jones fedora and glasses, and I got a tape recorder over my shoulder, and I'm kind of hanging out in the background interviewing the Yankee manager.
Oh, so you were from the 61 period?
Yeah.
1960?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I was in the flashback scenes, and
Billy
what
Crystal's
a
like,
blast!
these guys just kept talking about John Belushi. It made me sentimental.
And when they first released a trailer to promote the film, I'm in the trailer. I'm sitting behind this heckling fan who's giving it to Roger Maris. So what a huge thing.
Our buddy Pat is in it.
Oh yeah.
As
yeah.
New York Stadium cop.
I tried
You know
to
Pat?
yeah. I tried
Who's
to
that?
submit my name to IMDb for that, and for some reason I was never listed in the acting credits in there, even though I was featured fairly prominently. But yeah, I never made the acting credits in there. But a lot of
You
people I know were in
probably
there.
should have.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Because, but
Yeah.
I think you pissed Billy Crystal off.
No, as a matter of fact, the last day of filming, I'm like, I'm going to approach Billy Crystal because what are they going to do? Fire me? It's the last day of filming. So he's crossing the infield, and I had bought a disposable camera, and I approached him, shook his hand, thanked him for coming to Detroit. He asked if we had fun. I was like, oh, my God, this is amazing. And I said, can I get a picture with you? And he said, yes. So I got a picture of me and Billy Crystal on the last day of production.
So
cool.
question.
Yeah.
So you were right up in his space.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
How tall is he?
Oh, he probably 5'8", maybe around there.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
5'8", 5'9".
All right, that's cool because I always thought he was substantially taller than Tom Cruise, and you just proved it. Yeah, yeah. At 5'8", he towers over Tom Cruise.
I feel like Billy Crystal. If you pissed him off, like, you know what, you made me mad. Let's film him. I'm gonna put you. I'm gonna put you in the movie, and I'm gonna cut it.
Well, I did. There were some scenes that we filmed that did end up on the cutting room floor. And one of my friends, he thought he was going to be featured prominently. He was sitting behind Billy Crystal's daughter, who played Roger Maris's wife in the film. So my friend was sitting directly behind her, and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm going to be in this movie." But it turns out they shot her lines from extreme angles. So when they cut to one camera, he was off camera. When they cut to the other camera, he was off camera. So the scene comes up, and he's nowhere to be seen in it. So that made me laugh.
Oh my God.
But what a blast. And again, those are things that are, so special for someone who grew up in Michigan as a movie buff to pull that curtain aside and see how things were made and to talk to celebrities and stuff. I was just in absolute heaven. And years later, Anthony Michael Hall came to Motor City Comic Con, and I went up to him and had him sign my little vacation station wagon diecast car. And I said, you and I were co-workers at one time, and I was being silly. And he goes,
Yeah, I remember you.
That's exactly what he said.
No.
He did. Now, he was probably humoring me, but I said, I was a reporter in 61, and he goes, I knew you looked familiar, he said to me. And I was like, come on. And he was being genuine. And
Wow.
we hung out, we chatted, I got to interview him, and he acted like we were long lost friends.
Oh,
it
that
was
is
so amazing.
seriously cool.
Anthony Michael Hall, come on,
Yeah.
man.
Very cool.
So that whole experience was really amazing. Do you guys have any recollections of 61 when they were filming in Detroit?
No, I
Wow.
only saw it. I never got a chance to partake in any of the, like seeing it, like Batman vs Superman or the Wizard of Oz stuff. But no, it's. I mean, these are the things like you wish you had. This is the stuff that you could have had, and you would have this like generation. Like I got inspired by going on set. Like imagine taking your kid or your nephew or whoever. Like you go on set, you see it, and like, oh my God, this is great. I'm gonna go into movies.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they become a doctor or a lawyer, or whatever later on,
Yeah.
but you're taking that away, and I don't understand.
Yeah.
It doesn't make unfortunately I'm a very like logical person. 2 + 2 always has to equal 4.
Yeah.
It can't be 2 + 2 is Jello.
Yeah.
Like I go nuts, and so none of this makes sense. Why there's
I
no
agree
film
with you.
incentives?
Yeah.
The blood pressure's went up again.
Now, just a few months after 61, which was filmed in the summer of 2000 and then released the spring the following year, just a few months later, another movie filmed at Tiger Stadium before they tore it down. That was a movie called Hardball, which was released in September of 2001, starring a guy fresh off The Matrix, Keanu Reeves. And I was, a fan in the stands. It was a one-day gig just to be an extra in the stands, where he brings some inner-city baseball players to a ballpark to watch a major league game. And I just was like staring at him like, that's Neo, man. I am looking at Neo right now. That was surreal. And it was, like I said, one night only, but it was an absolute blast. The movie, even though he wasn't necessarily in this scene, the movie also has a young Michael B. Jordan, who is like maybe 10 or 11 or something at the time of this film, who knew that he was going to go on to become a big star.
Cow.
Now, unfortunately, Hardball only earned about $44 million on a $32 million budget, so it's kind of forgettable. Fans liked it more than critics. Critics gave it a 41. Fans gave it a 70. But yeah, and so not too long after Hardball, The Wrecking Ball came in, and took down Tiger Stadium, which was heartbreaking. But
Mm-hmm.
and I should say that, while filming 61, one of the highlights was just getting access to the stadium.
Right.
The locker room, like I snuck back into the locker room, and it was dressed for 1961. So the lockers had hair tonic and stuff in it, and to fully explore that space before they took a wrecking ball to it is something I'll never ever forget. And I got pictures of me,
I was just going to
Yeah.
ask you, did you grab a lot of pictures?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
snuck. We weren't really supposed to do it, but I saw other people taking pictures, so I bought a disposable camera and brought it with me and took pictures when I could, and I'm glad I did.
And that thing with critics, who always tend to poop. I mean, the critics will say that Sophie made the wrong choice. Like, so I mean, I don't even worry about that kind of stuff. Like they poo poo like the worst things. Like, just have some fun. Look, I understand there's some criteria, but Jesus.
Speaking of tigers, let's go way back. We're going to go back to 1983. I remember being a teenager, growing up in Hamtramck. There was all this buzz that a film crew was in Hamtramck shooting some scenes. And doing research just recently, I was surprised to find this out. This movie was the first made-for-TV movie that aired exclusively on the Disney Channel. That kind of blew my mind. It's a movie called Tiger Town, and it starred Roy Scheider of Jaws fame, Justin Henry, who was the kid on Kramer versus Kramer, I believe. And cameos in the film included Sparky Anderson, Mary Wilson of the Supremes fame, Ernie Harwell, Ray Lane, Al Ackerman. These were all, famous Detroit sports figures. And here's what I remember about the film. So this was 1983. They filmed some scenes of the kid running or riding a bike down Joseph Campo in Hamtramck. And later when I watched the film, basically the way the scene plays out is the kid is being accosted by some bullies or something, and he needs to get to Tiger Stadium because he's like a good luck charm for Roy Scheider's character, who's in his last season playing baseball, and they're getting closer and closer to the World Series. And he's like, I need to go to Tiger Stadium. He finally escapes the bullies, starts running. At some point, he gets a hold of a bike to finish the trek. Here's his path on the way to Tiger Stadium from Hamtramck. He runs past Eastern Market. He crosses the Belle Isle Bridge. And eventually ends up at Tiger Stadium. And I'm like, that kid ran his ass off. Anyone who grew up in the area knew that these places, you can't get from point A to point B. Why would you run to Belle Isle if you're heading to Tiger Stadium? Unless you want to visit the aquarium for a second.
Why go east to go west?
But yeah, so that was a really big deal. And I remember the buzz that they were filming this movie in Hamtramck, where I grew up. Another film that was filmed in Hamtramck was in 1998. Do you guys remember a movie called Polish Wedding?
No.
Does it sound, no?
Just from what I read today when I was looking up.
Yeah. So it came out in July of 98 and starred Gabriel Byrne, Lena Olin, Claire Danes. Did not make a lot of money. Its gross, according to Wikipedia, was $692,000.
On a budget of...
It didn't even list the budget.
Oh.
So, not great scores on Rotten Tomatoes, 42% versus 52%. Here's the interesting little tidbit, though. During one of the scenes, I guess if you look, there's a scene where there's a teen neighbor in the scene. It is the first screen appearance of Kristen Bell, who went on to great fame in Hollywood movies.
I read that,
but that's where it started, in this little movie.
She was living in Pleasant Ridge. That's where she grew up.
Oh, okay.
And went to, I think, Shrine in Royal Oak.
I wonder how she ended up as an extra in that film. But what was cool about it is it's filmed all over Hamtramck City Hall. It was filmed on the street that I grew up on. So even though the movie wasn't all that great, it's always cool to see places that you're familiar with on the big screen. And again, that's one of the benefits of making movies here in Michigan. Yeah. So what else? I want to talk about this movie. I can't remember if you guys said you saw this or not. Somewhere in Time.
Oh yeah.
You guys know
Christopher
Somewhere in
Reeve.
Time?
So,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. A couple months ago, we talked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we did an episode on time travel.
Yeah.
So this movie was released in October of 1980. At the time of filming, Superman was just on the cusp of coming out, so Christopher Reeve wasn't quite the big star that he became after Superman was released.
In which he did time travel again.
That's right.
Interesting
I
point.
didn't make that connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Somewhere in Time stars Christopher Reeve, the beautiful Jane Seymour. Christopher Plummer plays the villain, and basically Christopher Reeve's character just wills himself back to 1912 with no real scientific explanation. He just kind of hypnotizes himself to go back to 1912. It made a profit. It earned $10 million on a $4 million budget, but it was considered a box office failure. Now it has a cult following, and critics give it a 52% on Rotten Tomatoes. The audience gives it 88%. So it definitely has an audience following.
Joe, you got to mention your picture that you have.
Yeah, so after watching it again recently, and it's beautifully filmed, and,
Yeah,
it's
it is.
shot at the Grand Hotel at Mackinac Island, just lovingly portrayed. It's just stunning. Like Christopher Reeve's character, I fell in love with Jane Seymour, and apparently there are some businesses on Mackinac Island that make a living selling Somewhere in Time related memorabilia and replica
of
props and
course,
stuff.
of
So
course.
somebody was selling the replica portrait of Jane Seymour's character in a beautiful frame. So I got it. And it's,
Potential benefit for small businesses based on the film industry.
I know.
Yeah,
How dare you.
tourism.
Crazy.
My
Tourism.
Tourism. As a
Yes.
matter of fact, there are annual gatherings at Mackinac Island to watch the film. They dress in period clothing. Tourism.
Is there no end to your filthy
Benefit.
propaganda, Joe?
But it's a beautiful movie and a tragic ending. I read something recently that Jane Seymour and Christopher Reeve actually fell in love during the filming of this movie. But Christopher Reeve had a girlfriend that he wanted to break up with to be with Jane Seymour, and she beat him to the punch by telling him that she was pregnant. And so he had to end things with Jane Seymour, where they remained lifelong friends. But romance blossomed at Grand Hotel at Mackinac Island.
Wow.
That sounds like a movie.
I was a big Christopher Reeve fan after I seen Superman 1,
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
the first
Oh, yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And then
2 is pretty good, too.
And when I seen this movie come out, even though it was a love story and it's not something I would gravitate
Right.
toward, I definitely wanted to see it, and I did. And I was like, none of this in the world of physics make any sense.
Neil deGrasse Tyson is like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
but it was if you could just embrace the fact that you're here to forget about reality.
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
That's what
Spend
movies
2
are all
hours-
about,
that's
isn't
what
it?
movies
Suspend
are
disbelief.
all
I
about.
mean,
I don't need to know how,
Suspend disbelief.
I don't need to know how a flux capacitor works. Just-
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
that takes you
is
back
that-
in time. I'll
okay,
allow it.
I'm going to think about this penny and dress like from 1912, and then
I'm there.
and it worked.
Yeah.
The storytelling, the actors, the cinematography, the music.
Yeah.
I mean, Rachmaninoff.
Yeah.
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 I mean,
And the theme, the opening theme is, I guess
yeah.
the composer was a friend of Jane Seymour's, and she recommended him to the director, and he's like, he'll never do it. But she cashed in a personal favor. He did the opening theme, one of the all-time great movie themes. It's just fantastic.
Yeah,
It's like Groundhog Day. How can the day repeat over and over again? What's the science behind that? The guy's learning a lesson.
yeah.
Go with it.
Yeah, and they actually shot a scene for Groundhog Day to explain why it's happening, and they were like, we don't need to explain it, and they
Yeah.
cut it out.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I know people today who were extras at during the filming of Somewhere in Time, and they said Christopher Reeve was just the nicest guy in the world, and just really cool stories about filming at Mackinac Island.
Staring at the penny made a hell of a lot more sense than flying backwards around the planet.
I
I just
know.
want to put that around.
Don't get me started. Let's see now. Transformers. We talked about this recently. Why did Michael Bay feature Detroit in I think at least 3 of his Transformers films?
Yep.
And the island.
In the island.
Yeah, I'm not.
And the only explanation is that he loved Detroit. He had no roots here, no connection here.
And this was
but he
before
brought 4 of his films here.
2 of those. the island and the first Transformers were before the incentives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, say what you will about Michael Bay.
Yeah.
He brought commerce filmmaking to Michigan.
And
It's,
he,
it's
and he may have, helped Mark Wahlberg become a fan here, because Wahlberg, while filming the Transformers movie, said, "I enjoyed Detroit." He opened up Wahlburgers over here. He's
Yeah.
like, and he got interviewed. He said, "I'd love to come back here."
Yeah.
Yeah, they also filmed Transformers also at the Michigan Central Station.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't remember if Transformers was filmed on this place, but the island was. There's a scene when they're escaping. Was it on a motorcycle or
Yeah.
something? It's the I-75 bridge over the Rouge River.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then 1 or 2 scenes for both movies, Transformers Island, right downtown Detroit.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, one of my favorite stories. So not only was the first Transformers had some scenes filmed here, but Age of Extinction and Dark of the Moon were also filmed here. And one of my favorite stories didn't happen to me, but I'll pass it along. I have some friends that have TV and movie cars. Most of them are replicas. Some of our original, like the Monkey Mobile from the old Monkeys TV show. And my friend Mel bought a Bumblebee branded Camaro, yellow modern Camaro. And they had heard that Transformers was filming in the area. So him and my other buddy Michael hopped into the Camaro and went looking to see what they can find. And I think this was on Woodward. They turn onto Woodward in this Bumblebee Camaro, look in their rearview mirror and see Optimus Prime and all the other Transformers pulling up behind them at the light. What are the odds of that? So my friend Mike, who was in the passenger seat, got out, took a picture of the Camaro with all the Transformers lined up behind him, got back in the car, the light turned green, and they drove off. And I'm like, those are those stories that bringing the film industry here creates.
I love that one, because you say, asking, "What do your friends think? What do you want? What do you think they're thinking? Which one of us is Decepticon?" They know. Is it you? Get out of my car.
Yeah, but how cool? What are the odds of that?
Right.
That's incredible.
That's a great
So
pick.
what a neat.
I would love
story.
to see
So,
that pick.
Yeah.
I'll. It's on my phone. I'll dig it
Okay.
up.
And those are stories that you hear, like when people don't live in Hollywood. They go, "Yeah, I was driving by, and then the Ghostbusters car drove by, and the Knight Rider was in my apartment parking lot." And you're like, "It wasn't."
Yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah, I remember being in L.A. one time. Some friends of mine and I went into a comic book store, and when we stepped out of the comic book store, Ben Affleck's Batmobile was on a flatbed truck, stopped at a light in front of the comic book store. We're like, come on, man, this is awesome. I love those kind of things, those kind of moments, you know. Another movie I want to throw out, I remember it was kind of a big deal when it was filming again. This is several years before the incentives. You guys remember a movie called Road to Perdition?
Yes.
That was released.
Is that the Tom Hanks film?
Yep.
Yeah,
and Jude
Tom
Law.
Hanks.
Was that done here?
Daniel Craig.
It was done on the west side of the state.
Yeah.
It doesn't count.
Excellent.
This
Excellent.
is called Made in Michigan. So,
Yeah.
so it came out in 2002, directed by Sam Mendes, starring
Based off a graphic novel.
Tom Hanks, Paul Newman, Jude
Yep.
Law, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Stanley Tucci, and a pre-Bond Daniel Craig,
Yep.
who. This was my only exposure to Daniel Craig, who played a complete nut job in this film. And they were like, "Oh, he's been tapped to play James Bond." And I'm like, I don't see it. And then after Casino Royale, I'm like, my apologies to Mr. Craig. He knocked it out of the park. But yeah, so Road to Perdition earned $183 million on an $80 million budget, 82% from critics, 86% from the audience. Locations include Grand Rapids, Saugatuck, where some friends of mine had a cottage, Zealand, and the beautiful beach scenes that you see in Road to Perdition were filmed in West Olive, Michigan, which is right on the west coast of the state. Beautifully filmed, great gangster movie, and if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's really, really good. And Tom Hanks in a role that was a little different for him, where
Very
he
different.
was like a mob enforcer sort of a thing.
Hey, you know what doesn't have beaches? Georgia, Arizona,
Yeah.
West Virginia. I'm sorry.
And you could easily, on those sandy, West Coast beaches, that could pass for the Pacific Ocean or whatever. I mean, you could easily say this is the Pacific Ocean. So,
I could never
But
be
yeah.
at any of these hearings. I would just be sitting there. If I listened to the absurdity, I'm like, you guys,
You know, I think that actually would be a great documentary series to take you to these hearings and give you like, I don't know, an energy drink or two, and then just get you riled up enough to sit in and then speak your mind.
I would just be there popping Advil. Just have a migraine every time you talk, sir.
Now, one movie, if you tell someone, oh, we're going to do a podcast about movies filmed or set in Michigan, obviously the first movie, at least in my case, that's going to come up is Beverly Hills Cop, even though it's mostly set in Beverly Hills. I do remember the excitement of, it was on the news that there was a movie filming in downtown Detroit, and there was a semi-truck involved in a chase and crashing into cars, and cartons of cigarettes were flying out of the back of the truck, and bystanders would race out and grab the cigarettes and run off, even though I'm sure they were just empty cartons. But I remember that made the news that this film was shooting in downtown Detroit, and it was all very exciting. But then when the movie came out, the opening montage of the movie made Detroit look like a piece of shit. Really? They found the worst of the worst neighborhoods. They go, okay, this is Detroit. It's
And
pretty bad.
really, they had to hunt for those neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Because Detroit has really turned
Well, even
around.
back then,
I mean,
in the
it's
80s,
beautiful.
yeah.
I mean,
So they had to hand select
'Cause remember-
places to make it look worse than it was.
Juxtaposed to Beverly Hills.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, that was. The intent.
right.
Exactly.
To let people know, or let the audience know that Axel Foley this is where it comes from.
Right.
And he's about to be transported.
Yeah, yeah. Now, here's my little Forrest Gump moment. Of the cast of Beverly Hills Cop, I have crossed paths with Judge Reinhold, Ronnie Cox, who plays Bogomil in the film, Bronson Pinchot, who I interviewed,
Belky.
Gil Hill, the Detroit police chief. I met the Gil Hill at an event. And I sat pretty much in the front row when Damon Wayans showed up and performed at a comedy club that I was at.
Wow.
And he had the classic line, "Go ahead, take these bananas." I love that. And I was also in the same room as Eddie Murphy. I was in the audience for the Arsenio Hall show back in '89, October '89. And, Eddie and Arsenio were tight. And I was sitting in the bleachers, and there was kind of this looking down to my left. I was up against a railing, and I saw this entourage come in, and it was kind of dark, and I'm squinting. And this usher is kind of standing next to me, and I go, "Is that Eddie Murphy?" And he turns and looks and goes, "Yeah, it is." And then they hung out for a little bit, and then they left because they were drawing too much attention. So I have this bond with Beverly Hills Cop, and it's one of my all-time favorite movies. And it was a monster hit, $316 million on a $13 million budget, which is crazy. 82% positive on Rotten Tomatoes. They filmed from May 1984 to July 1984, so some of the scenes filmed in Detroit was on Jefferson Avenue, Grand River Avenue. The parts of the truck chase took place on 30th Street. The opening montage shows the Ford Rouge Center in Dearborn. Unfortunately, if you want to visit Axel Foley's apartment where his buddy gets assassinated, that's you'd have to go to Los Angeles for that. His apartment is in Los Angeles on 685 Whitmer Street off of 7th Street in downtown Los Angeles. So a little Hollywood trickery there.
I like how you're doxing Hollywood sites now.
I love my Hollywood location. So yeah, it's unfortunate that Detroit was kind of depicted in a negative light in that film, but Detroiters embrace it.
That was the 80s.
Yeah.
RoboCop did the same thing. It was the
Yeah.
bearer of the bad boys.
Yeah, right. And Eddie would wear that Mumford sweatshirt throughout the entire first film, maybe even the subsequent films. It's like he had one shirt. I think it even showed up in the recent reboot of Beverly Hills Cop. I think he still wore that Mumford shirt. And can you imagine being a student at Mumford High School and you go to see Beverly Hills Cop and he's representing your school in this monster hit movie that, again, benefits of shooting film.
You can see the school going, let me calculate when he would have been in high school as the character. They go back to that yearbook, you see Axel Foley's like pictured like a young like Eddie Murphy. Like, did you guys put that in there now? I wanted to help out.
Yeah, such a great film, man. It was such a big deal. You mentioned RoboCop. Other than some like stock footage of Detroit, nothing was filmed in Detroit. It was mostly filmed in Dallas and parts of Pittsburgh.
The steel mill.
One interesting thing, and this is a cool little tidbit. I was in Dallas a couple years ago, and I was doing a JFK tour that I just kind of made up. I was just Googling things and going from building to building, and I went to the building where Lee Harvey Oswald was killed. Even though I couldn't get inside, but there's a ramp that they exited. He was in the ambulance dead. Well, when I shared that information on Facebook after I got back home, they go, "Do you know that building was featured in RoboCop?" And I'm like, "What now?" So do you guys remember in RoboCop, there's a hostage situation. There's a gunman that had like killed a councilman, and he had some people hostage. RoboCop goes up there, breaks through a wall, grabs the gunman, and throws him out a window. And the news crews, like, you see them following him down to the ground. That was filmed in the same building that Lee Harvey Oswald was killed in. That blew my mind. So, yeah, it's like the Dallas Municipal Building or something like that. So right around the corner from that was the entrance to the ramp where Oswald was killed.
It wasn't the book suppository building.
The one thing I always when I reference RoboCop, it's because wasn't there some move to want to build a RoboCop statue?
Yeah,
it's a work in progress. I've seen pictures of it like in various stages of development.
And that got me in trouble because I was dumping on my friend who's from Philadelphia because they put a Rocky statue up. It's a fictional character. Have some pride. You have the Philadelphia, you have the Liberty Bell in your city. Take some pride. My city would never do. What's that now?
Yeah. Last I heard, they want to put it at Eastern Market. That's the last thing I heard. But I don't know where it is. I don't know if it's been
the
bronzed
story
yet.
is set in Detroit, but it was filmed in Dallas.
Oh, yeah. So even though Detroit's mentioned in RoboCop, nothing was really filmed.
It's not like Rocky's like jogging up those steps was filmed like in D.C. or something. It was filmed at least in Philadelphia. Damn it.
We have about 10 minutes left. I want to throw out a couple other titles. Semi-Pro starring Will Ferrell. It's kind of bombed at the box office. It actually lost money. But that was filmed in the Flint area, and I'm sure the Flint area greatly appreciated Hollywood coming to Flint.
It's a cult classic.
Yeah. I thought it was very funny. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm not a big Will Ferrell fan, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I saw it in the theater.
So that was filmed in Flint. What else do I have here? Grosse Pointe Blank, starring John Cusack.
Yeah.
Filmed in Grosse Pointe in Detroit.
Great movie.
Not a big hit, $31 million on $15 million budget, but high scores on Rotten Tomatoes.
They said only aerial shots were.
Oh, really?
Of Grosse Pointe. Yeah, there's nothing. It was like establishing shots.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. And what else? I think that pretty much covers my list. There is one title I'm deliberately not mentioning because I'm going to turn it over to you guys. A little movie called 8 Mile was filmed on 8 Mile. Share your thoughts because I never saw it.
It's the only thing that people outside of Michigan get reference to us. Like, hey, wasn't 8 Mile filmed there?
Yeah.
Aren't you having like, that's great.
Yeah.
It was.
So this is the point in the episode where I say I haven't seen a movie.
Now, one thing that I read is during the credits, and I don't know if this is at the start of the credits or the end of the credits, there is a graphic that comes up on the screen that says filmed on location in the 313. Yeah, no, I remember that was a really big deal when they were filming in Detroit, and again, it was a monster hit. Yeah, $243 million on a $41 million budget.
Yeah,
and the lovely Kim Basinger was in town for that. Brittany Murphy, and of course Eminem, who basically played like a fictionalized version of himself.
Yeah,
right?
it was good.
Yeah, it was semi-autobiographical.
So quick question.
Yes,
since you did all this research, wasn't there a movie directed by Sam Raimi, starring Bruce
Campbell?
Thing called Evil Dead.
Yeah, wasn't that a Michigan film?
I would imagine it was. I'm not a big horror guy, so you guys are going to have to fill me in on Evil Dead.
when I was growing up, I had heard that they had filmed some of it like in the woods, like out in like Livingston County. On IMDb, the only place it shows was outside of Marshall, which is between Battle Creek and Jackson, I think, right at I-94 and I-69. Nice little town. But that's all that it showed. 'Cause they filmed a lot of it also in Tennessee, like the actual cabin and stuff. And
it is?
yeah,
I thought it was
there you go.
cabin.
Most
it had to be
most
Tennessee.
most of it was Tennessee because there's when they're driving there, you see mountains in the background. But some of
we
it,
got mountains, Mount Clemens, and
I'd have
God,
to do some more research.
Even for our standards.
that was good. Man.
Yeah, they were.
I'm not cutting that out later.
They were going to. There were film students at Michigan State at the time. Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell. They were buddies. Of course, Sam Raimi was from Royal Oak, I think it is.
Yeah.
But Evil Dead 2, I don't know. I don't know if the second
I'm
one
not
had
sure.
any.
But I'll tell you what, Sam Raimi sings the praise of Michigan any chance he gets. He was devastated when they pulled in steps because when he filmed that Oz movie at that studio, Michigan Motion Picture Studio, he said the facilities were great, the staff was great. He was trying to endorse. He was trying to tell everyone of his friends, come to Michigan. They have all the resources. Don't bring your crew. They have the crews here.
Yeah.
You could use all the crews that are right here. And then he filmed. I think him and Bruce Campbell filmed Ash versus Evil Dead because you mentioned Walking Dead. TV is another thing. If you get TV shows here, they'll film.
Oh yeah, that's longevity. That's a long-term
like
commitment.
Detroiters.
Yeah.
Detroiters.
Yeah, that was
Detroit
fun.
187.
Detroit
with
187.
Michael Imperioli. It was only one season. but
One
it was,
season.
Yeah,
It was a decent show. I watched it. Yeah.
Speaking of Bruce Campbell, a story I like to share is when I ran a little studio on the campus of Oakland University, there's a guy who reserved our studio, and he said he was putting together a little documentary about Sam and Bruce Campbell, and he said, I'm going to do a little interview in the studio. And I'm like, oh, who'd you get, Sam or Bruce? He goes, I got Bruce's dad. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. So he brings in Bruce's dad to interview him about what made these two guys successful. How did they escape the, clutches of Michigan to become big Hollywood players? And I love the dad's response. He said, that's all these guys knew since they were kids, just filming things and writing things. And they just did it. They never said, someday we're going to make a movie. They were always doing it. And the piece of advice that the father gave is he said, most people live life 8 days a week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and someday. He goes, if you want to be successful in this field, you just do it. Successful writers write. Successful filmmakers make films. Musicians record music. That's all they know. That's all they do. And it was a great interview and really great advice from Bruce Campbell's dad.
Yeah, that's right.
So we only got a couple minutes left. Any final thoughts? Any major titles I neglected?
I was going to throw out the Red Dawn remake. Not a great movie, but I noticed a lot of local places. Towards the end, there's a big shootout scene filmed right on Saginaw Street,
Oh,
right?
SWAT.
Right downtown Pontiac.
SWAT was filmed here too.
SWAT Firefly, the one with Gabriel Mott from Suits and Giancarlo Esposito was in it.
Yep. And,
Not the Sam Jackson version, or
No. That was SWAT. They made a sequel because they
I
enjoyed
had
them.
no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah,
So
me
it was
neither.
SWAT Firefly. And Robert Patrick was in it, the guy from Terminator 2.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
And I was just going to one of my two favorite courtroom dramas, Anatomy of a Murder, was filmed up in Marquette.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah.
When I brought up today, I was telling a visitor in the studio today what our topic was. One of the first movies that came off his brain was The Big Chill, and I'm like, wait, let me look that up. Now, The Big Chill is supposedly set in Ann Arbor, University of Michigan. But when I looked up filming locations, not a second of footage was recorded here in Michigan. So even though it's fictionally set in Michigan, it was filmed elsewhere.
Was For the Love of the Game with Kevin Costner filmed in any of it? Was any of that filmed in Tiger Stadium?
In Tiger Stadium? I don't recall.
I'll look it up.
I always wondered about that. I always meant to look that up. Another one, Four Brothers. That was another one about their.
with Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, Mark Wahlberg, and
yep.
and a few others. They're all adopted, and their mom gets killed, and they all come back to Detroit to figure out what happened.
You just reminded me of another title, Hoffa, I remember when they filmed many scenes in downtown Detroit. Even though it's so historically inaccurate, they make it look like the gunfight happened in the parking lot of the restaurant where Hoffa disappeared, which is so off the mark. Now, ironically, even though Hoffa filmed a lot of scenes in Detroit, The Irishman, which is based on the book You Paint Houses, Don't You? Not a single second of that movie was filmed in Detroit, which I think is a missed opportunity.
Right.
And had we had the incentives, I bet you they would have
Yeah.
come to Detroit to film a story about Hoffa.
But speaking of the Irishman, there was a film Killing the Irishman, I think.
Was that another Hoffa-based film, or was
No,
it something?
no, it's completely different.
Okay. All right.
But it was filmed here.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
I don't recall that one.
It was called Killing the Irishman.
But
But-
I got to look it up. I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, I've never heard of
So
Yeah.
interesting story. I was an extra on that, and I didn't realize it was a period piece. And I guess in the 70s, nobody had goatees.
Interesting.
So
Huh.
I show up on set, and they're like, "You got to shave." I'm like, "Why?" I'm in the background. You're probably not going to see me.
Yeah.
They stuck me in a car, really cool era car,
Vintage car, yeah.
and I'm driving it. But before I got in there, they said, "No, you have to shave." So they forced me to shave, and got in the car. I'm driving it. I stop. Hubcap comes off. Everybody's looking at me as if
You
it
had
was my
something
fault. And I'm like, so they put duct tape on. And
Fixes everything.
we did it 2 or 3 more times.
That's awesome.
I came home. My kids were like, who are you? So, yeah. And when I watched that movie, you could see the car driving. You can't even see me. So
Yeah.
Oh no!
You know,
I shaved for nothing.
I bet there were
And I didn't
goatees
even-
in the 70s.
I didn't even get extra money for changing my look.
Oh no!
I mean, when you think about it, the 60s
he's
was
bad.
the Van Dyke.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there had to have been people in the 70s with a goatee.
Now I don't know if these movies were filmed here, but I'd be remiss if we didn't mention Assault on Precinct 13,
Mm-hmm.
Out of Sight with George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez, which it's the story set in Detroit. I don't know if it was ever here.
You know what? I'm glad you mentioned that because my sister used to work at Metro Airport, and she reported a George Clooney sighting at Metro Airport. So there was a scene with Clooney filmed at the airport. I
Could be Ides of
assume
March. Ides of March.
Okay.
Up
Because that was
up in the air.
No, that wasn't in. They never landed in Detroit for that one. But Ides of
Up
March.
in the Air was an animated film, wasn't it?
No, that's
No, that
Up.
was up.
That's how.
That's Up.
yeah.
Oh, it's up.
Up in the
All
Air
right.
was with Anna Kendrick and George Clooney when they have
Yeah.
to fire
That's-
people.
That's right.
All right.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm not sure which film it was, but yeah, there was a George Clooney sighting at the airport.
That was for Ides of March.
It was a Steven Soderbergh movie.
Ryan Gosling and
It's Clooney and J Lo.
Out of
Steve-
Sight. Out
Out of sight.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
That's what we were talking about.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Welcome to the show.
Podcast is falling apart quickly.
The other one I
I'll
want to
fix
mention,
it in post.
The Crow. The Crow. That was
The Crow took place here.
Yeah, that was set in
Set-
Detroit. Yeah.
And then for some reason I remember this one, White Boy Rick with Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, about the story. Yeah.
Of White Boy Rick. I think that was actually filmed in Detroit.
Yeah.
But
All
it
right.
might have been.
Anything else? It's time to wrap it up.
No, I can't afford
Luke,
my blood pressure.
Luke,
to
do you
go
have
up again.
anything to
Yeah,
quickly
let's-
plug?
Any
well-
websites, any contact information you want to give out?
Yeah.
Yeah. Michigan Film Network. We have 2 films currently in pre-production. Sci-fi horror, Waitress, and crime thriller, SSK. And quick note, our friend here, Andrew Wesley Walker, has
Sounds
a
like a
role.
serial killer's name.
Oh,
There's a good reason why.
yeah. Wait till you see the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you, Luke, for bringing me on.
Yeah.
Andrew, I swear to God, if you don't watch the movie that you're in,
Oh,
I'll never
I
forgive
gotta
you.
Watch it.
you can't say I've never seen this.
Can you imagine years from now we're talking about the movie and you're like,
I'm in it, but
I don't remember it. That's how insignificant a role it was.
On that note, we're going to wrap up Hollywood Blockbusters. Great conversation, guys. Luke, thanks for joining us.
Thank
It
you,
was
Luke.
my pleasure. I
Adding
had a
some
lot of fun being
insight.
here. Thank
and,
you.
we'll see you. Thanks for listening. Thanks. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
See you.
Come to the movies, watch Charlie Chaplin, and put some sunshine into your day. Forget the hard times, come to the movies, and try to laugh your troubles away.